First, my name is Monty, and I'm a data and analytics consultant at Thorogood. I'm joined by my colleague Felipe, and I put our contact information up on the screen, so please feel free to reach out with any questions or comments that you have after the webinar. So just a quick overview of the session. We're going to start with a quick introduction to Thorogood, and then we'll jump right into an intro to DevOps. And after that, we'll talk specifically about Azure DevOps. And then next, Felipe, he'll take us through a demo using Azure DevOps, and then we'll do a brief wrap up. So just starting off with who we are and what we do, just giving you the big picture. We help our customers make sense of their data. We're an independent and specialist data and analytics company with a focus on data engineering, data science, and data visualization. Our approach is rooted in understanding business goals and using the capabilities of technology to meet these goals so that the customers and business objectives are at the forefront of our approach. We're a global company with offices and consultants in Asia, Europe, and the Americas, and we offer a full range of services when it comes to data and analytics. That includes data and technology strategies and roadmaps, end-to-end implementations of cloud solutions, user empowerment, and analytics services. We do have strong experience in a number of industries, banking and insurance being two of them, and also pharmaceuticals and consumer packaged goods. But we also work with customers in many other industries too, and I've just listed a sampling of some of these companies that we worked with here on the screen. And we're independent in that we're not tied to one specific technology. Instead, we work with and partner with a variety of technologies and companies in the data and analytics space. This independence, it gives us a holistic perspective and really an unbiased approach when working with our clients to develop a solution or a product. Now that we're done with that brief intro to Thorogood, now we can just talk about DevOps. Let's just start by defining DevOps. DevOps is a set of practices that combine software development and IT operations. It aims to shorten the system's development lifecycle, and it provides continuous delivery of high-quality software. So I want to make it clear that specific DevOps practices will likely vary by project, meaning that you likely won't follow the same process, tools, and techniques on each project. However, the ultimate goal is still going to remain the same in that we're looking to streamline the software delivery lifecycle. Next, let's just talk about why DevOps is important. First is that it reduces the time to deliver value. This is because DevOps is rooted in automation, which will inherently decrease the time spent doing manual integrations and deployments. For example, let's say we've added a new feature to a web application and we want to integrate those changes to our existing source code. Before updating the source code, we want to perform some testing like unit tests and integration tests. However, we don't want to do this manually, so instead we can create a pipeline that automatically runs tests on our code and will integrate the changes automatically if all the test cases are passed. And also, since we've automated processes like deployment, end users, they can see and use the working version of the application a lot sooner. Next, DevOps, it allows us to respond to business opportunities quickly. DevOps, it enables iterative development because it seeks to automate common processes like integration, delivery, and deployment. So developers, they can incorporate user feedback into future releases without having to go through an arduous deployment process. And in addition, being able to respond faster than competitors, they can deliver benefits like increased sales, innovations, reduced cost, and customer loyalty. And then lastly, we can see a step change in productivity since integration, delivery, and deployment are automated. Teams can deliver more in the same amount of time. And also less time is spent dealing with issues in the project lifecycle, so more time can be spent developing valuable features. Okay, now that we've laid down the foundations, let's talk about some key DevOps principles, and you'll see these principles pop up in the demo later. And also, as I mentioned previously, you don't need to implement all four of these principles. They can and usually do vary depending on the project. The first is version control or source control. Version control, it's the practice of tracking and managing changes to an application. In order to do this, version control systems exist, with the most popular being Git. Now, why would you want to use version control during application development? It all comes down to protecting the source code of the software that we're developing. The source code is synonymous with the source of truth, as in it's the clean, thoroughly tested, and most up-to-date code that has been deployed to the end users. Likewise, we want to make sure that the source code stays error-free because it's ultimately what the end users will see. Version control systems, they allow us to revert our source code back to any previous version that we want. So let's just say that a developer accidentally pushes code that contains a bug to the source code. We can use a tool like Git to revert our application to the previous version, therefore having an error-free application again. Next, we have continuous integration and continuous delivery, also known as CI/CD. CI/CD is rooted in Agile development principles, meaning that development of software should be done iteratively or in small chunks. Continuous integration is the practice of integrating code changes into a single shared repository upon passing automated tests. Continuous delivery is the practice of automatically provisioning infrastructure and deploying the application to the desired environment. And then CI/CD, it's typically done together, so continuous integration and continuous development. And the key to both methods is automation. We don't want to have to manually test and integrate our code, as this can be timely and it's going to take away valuable time that could be used for feature development. And the same applies for infrastructure creation and deployment as well. Next, let's talk about infrastructure as code, which is essentially using scripts to create environments and services like networks, virtual machines, and containers. There are a few reasons for this. The first reason is that it allows for environments to be treated as instances of the same entity, which means they can be tested together since they were created using the same script. The second reason is scalability. Scripts can scale by automatically setting the number of environments or services needed. And finally, there's cloud infrastructure. This isn't a necessary component of DevOps, but it does provide flexibility, time savings by utilizing fully managed platforms, and it gives you scalability very easily as well. I just want to highlight some of the popular tools that are used for DevOps. This isn't an exhaustive list. There are many more tools, but these are just the ones that are most commonly used. For version control, there's Git and Apache Subversion, which is also known as SVN. These are both open source, and I do want to note that Git is by far the most popular and commonly used version control system. Then for CI/CD, there is Jenkins and Circle CI. An important distinction between them is that Jenkins is open source while Circle CI isn't. And then lastly, there are DevOps platforms. By DevOps platform, I just mean a platform that has many DevOps capabilities built in. So two popular platforms are GitHub, which is especially popular for open source projects. And there's also Azure DevOps, which integrates well with other Azure services. And both of these platforms, they're based on the cloud and provide a code repository with version control, CI/CD, and collaboration tools. All right, now let's just talk specifically about Azure DevOps. So let's just talk about the services that it has to offer. The first service is Azure Boards, which is really just an agile task tracking tool. Then second, we have Azure Pipelines, which are just used to create continuous integration and continuous development pipelines. Then there are Azure Repos, which act as a private cloud storage location for source code, and it enables easy collaboration through Git. And then next, there are Artifacts, which it's an extension that allows you to create, install, and share packages within your team. And then lastly, there's Azure Test Plans, which gives us a way to track manual testing for sprints and milestones that we may have. And we'll take a closer look at these services during the demo, which is just coming up soon. But before that, I would just want to mention that Azure DevOps, it doesn't limit you to its own services. You can integrate with a lot of popular DevOps tools. What we have on the screen isn't an exhaustive list, but just gives you an idea of Azure DevOps flexibility. But now we can move on to the demo, so I can hand things over to my colleague Felipe, who can take you through that.
So for the demonstration of Azure DevOps functionalities, we're going to deploy a simple Python web app to an Azure App Service resource with a test and a production slot. Just to clarify how this works, it is a good practice for web applications to first deploy your code to a test slot and then swap that slot with the production one. The end user will only have access to the production slot, so this will help us by reducing downtime and also enable us to deploy the code first to a slot where the users don't have access, test if it looks as expected, and only then enable the users to access the updated content. We will use many different components for this deployment. First, we will use Azure Boards to see the specific change request made by the user. Then we will proceed to Azure Repos, where we will create a feature branch for development, commit the change, and then raise a pull request to merge the feature branch into the main branch. After the pull request is succeeded, the change made to the main branch will automatically trigger a build pipeline using Azure pipelines, which will publish an artifact. After that build pipeline is succeeded, the release pipeline will be automatically triggered. This specific release will have two stages. So first, it will deploy our code to our test slot. The second stage of the release requires a manual approval, so we will access our test slot, validate if the changes are in fact working as expected, and then approve the second stage, which will trigger the slot swap. So this is just a general overview. Now let me share my other screen. So here I have a specific tab where I can see my test slot, and you can also see here my production slot. You can see that these slots have different URLs. So when accessing these specific URLs, we can see how the application looks in these two different slots. So here we can see this text, and here we can see this. So here, obviously, my test environment, and the other one is production. Here in production, you can see that the application currently has this message. So this is a sample web application. Now, moving on to Azure DevOps, I will start here in Azure Boards. So we have a specific card generated by a user request requesting to change the display text to deployment succeeded. So now I'll just move my card to the doing section of the board, and I'll move on to Azure Webhooks. Here, I will just create my feature branch that I will use to develop my changes. So I can click on the branch icon here and select new branch. I'm going to call this feature text, and I'm going to create this based on my main branch, and I'm going to link my work item to the card that I'm currently working on. Now that I have my new branch, I'll just do a small code change to the code here, and then commit that code to my new branch. So I'm just going to create here now. So now that I'm in my new feature branch, I'm just going to go in this, and I'm going to change this specific test. So just going to add it here and change this to deployment succeeded. Great. Now I just need to commit my changes. So I'll just add a quick description here, and I'm going to link my work item to this commit as well. Now that my change is committed, I can raise a pull request to merge this branch with my main branch. So I will just click here, and this will take me to this screen over here. Now I'm going to select, I want to merge my feature text into my main branch. And now I will just add a name to this pull request. So first, merge changes into main branch. I'm going to add myself as a required reviewer. So I'm just going to go here and select my own name. And you can see that since I already linked this card to my feature branch, I can see that this is already linked to my pull request. So right now I'm just going to create this. Now this is created. Now I can approve this pull request. And okay, so I'm just going to approve this. So before completing this merge, let me just show you what I have in my pipeline, since everything will be done automatically. So if I click here on pipelines, I'm taken to the screen where I can see the build I created for this application. So if I click here on DevOps app and click on edit, I can see that I have this simple YAML pipeline that I created for this deployment, for this build. So what this is doing actually is just archiving my files and then publishing my artifact into this artifact called drop. So I'm just archiving my files and then publishing it into an artifact called drop. It's important to notice here that I can also implement automated test cases that will test my code, and obviously my build will only proceed if the test cases are successful. So moving on to my release pipelines, here I have this web app prod deployment. If I click on edit, you can see my artifact is linked to this deployment, and I have two different stages. So as soon as my build is finished, it will trigger the first stage that will deploy the application to my test slot. And after this first stage is completed, I will just check if the changes are available in my test slot. And after I verify if the application looks nice, we will manually approve the second stage that will swap my test slot with the production slot. Now I can finally complete my pull request. So let me get back to that pull request. So if I click here, I can just complete this. I want to delete my feature branch after merging, so I can just complete this merge. Okay, now that this is done, we can actually take a look and see that my build is already in progress. So if I come up all the way here to my pipelines, you can see that my build pipeline is running, and we can also check exactly what activities are being done. We can see an exact summary of this activity, and we can also see the changes that are involved in this build over here. Okay, so I think this will take around over a minute, so we just need to wait a bit, and this is soon going to be finished. Now that my build pipeline is successful, we can now see the release pipeline was immediately triggered right after that build is finished. Right now it's running my test slot, so let's just take a look at this. If I click here on test slot, we can see a summary of the deployment. We can check the commits that are included in this release. Right here we can see exactly the 2 commits right here. And we can also see the work items that are linked to this deployment. So here, for example, you can see that we have that exact same card I linked previously to my feature branch. Okay, so now this stage is going to be finished. I expect this will take around a minute. We can also click here on logs and see exactly which activities are being done. So right here, for example, we can see that this is just deploying the app service to this log, and we can track exactly which activities my Azure DevOps agent is performing. So we can just wait for a few seconds. Okay, this is completed. Great. Now that this is finished, my next stage is pending approval. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to access my test slot and see if my changes are in there. Okay, so we can see that the text changed here. So this is good. This is exactly what we were expecting. So now we can move on and approve the next stage. And now this is approved, and my second stage will follow through. Now my deployment is proceeding to the next stage. Now I can click here. I can again see the commits over here, and I can also check my work items. So while this is doing, let's just check this card again to see how it looks like right now. So here you can see that it's exactly the same. And you can also see that you have the production deployment right here linked to this. And you can also see the specific merge request that is linked and the specific commits. So this is really useful to track the commits that were made as part of this activity, and also the pull request that was used to merge my changes. So it grants a nice traceability to this development I made, and anyone interested in seeing what happens here can easily figure it out by themselves. So you can see, like, I can obviously click here, and this will take me to my pull request. So now going back to my release pipeline, let's see how that's going. Okay, so my swap is still ongoing. Let's just take a look and wait for this to be finished. Okay, after these 30 awkward seconds, we can now see that my deployment was succeeded. So if we move here all the way to my production slot, and I can open this link, you can see that my text changed here as well. So you can see that the deployment was succeeded and everything looks as expected. And just something interesting we can see as well. Right now, my card immediately moved to done. So we can see that my card is already here at done. So my activities here are finished. So that's it for the demo. Hope this was helpful to understand the functionalities of Azure DevOps. And let me get back to my slides. So we specialize in advanced analytics, data science, machine learning, AI, and more. We come from a business-focused perspective and tailor a solution to best fit the needs of our clients. Some of the services we offer are exploratory analytics to answer business questions, test hypotheses, and discover new models to drive business value, MLOps and DevOps, industrialization of existing use cases into production scale systems, analytics architecture design projects to enable data science, ML, and AI at enterprise scale, data democratization enablement via a number of user empowerment projects and data lake offerings to achieve enterprise-wide data accessibility, analytics empowerment programs to promote adoption of models and tools, multi-cloud infrastructure enablement initiatives to fully realize the value of various cloud services, analytics strategy projects to advise on the people, data, tools, and processes needed to realize the value of AI and ML. So really anything in this space we have experience in, and would love to have the opportunity to learn more about what initiatives you are planning. So I would definitely encourage you to reach out to us. So that's everything we had for today. Thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed the webcast. Our contact information is here in this last slide. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about the webcast or about any other topics, and we will be happy to help. Thank you.